The internet is a battlefield. Mechanics scream that modern oil is water. Others swear thick oil is suicide. Who is lying? We stopped guessing and decided to find out ourselves. We ran 3 viscosities in one engine for 7,500 miles. The lab results were shocking. One oil is the ultimate protector, while another is silently killing your performance. We have the proof that destroys the myths. Stop gambling with your engine's life. Here is the undeniable truth. The contenders. Before we reveal the destruction, we need to understand the enemy. What do these numbers actually mean? Most people think the W stands for weight. That is wrong. It stands for winter. The first number, 0, 5, or 10, tells you how the oil flows when it is freezing cold. You want this number to be low. A lower number means the oil shoots up to the cylinder, head faster on a cold morning, preventing that terrifying clatter you hear when you start an old car. The second number, 20, 30, or 40, is the viscosity when the engine is hot, operating at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the crucial number. This represents the thickness of the film, protecting your metal parts from rubbing against each other at 3,000 RPM. We are testing a massive controversy here. Theory 1 suggests that 0W-20 is simply too thin to protect against high heat and stress, existing purely to satisfy government fuel economy mandates. Theory 2 suggests that 5W-40 is the ultimate protection, the bulletproof vest for your engine, but it causes drag that ruins efficiency. To test this, we used a 3.5-liter V6 engine. It is a common engine found in millions of sedans and SUVs. It is not a race car, but it is not a lawnmower. It is the perfect representation of what you drive every day. We aren't doing a 5-minute dyno pull. We are living with these oils through traffic, highways, and cold starts to see which one actually keeps the metal inside the engine where it belongs. We spent thousands of dollars on lab fees and thousands of miles of driving to bring you this data. We are putting this engine on the line so you don't have to guess. If you value real-world testing over internet rumors, click that like button and subscribe right now. It helps us fund the next engine destruction. But before we get to the lab results, we have to talk about the feeling, because the difference in how the car drove was immediately noticeable, and it might make you rethink everything you know about protection. Round 1. The water oil, 0W-20. We started with the one everyone is terrified of, 0W-20. I remember clearly when I bought my first modern truck, a 2019 Silverado. I popped the hood, looked at the oil cap, and saw 0W-20 staring back at me. My grandfather, a man who has been wrenching on engines since the 1960s, looked at it and literally laughed. "That is not oil," he said. "That is sewing machine lubricant. If you tow a boat with that stuff, you will spin a bearing before you hit the highway." That fear is real and pervasive. When you pour this oil into the funnel, it splashes. It doesn't cling to the plastic. It looks like dirty water. It feels wrong to put it into a machine that generates thousands of explosions per minute. Despite the fear, we filled the test mule with a premium synthetic 0W-20 and drove it for exactly 7,500 miles. The driving mix was 60% highway and 40% city, including some idling and some full-throttle merges to simulate real-world abuse. The first thing we noticed was the throttle response. Honestly, the engine felt snappy. Cold starts were absolutely instant. There was zero valve noise in the morning, no ticking, no rattling. It felt like the engine had zero resistance, like it was spinning freely on a cushion of air. After the 7,500 miles were up, we drained it. It came out looking like dark coffee, which is normal for a modern engine. We sent it off to the professional laboratory, expecting disaster. We were bracing ourselves for high iron counts, which would indicate wear from the crankshaft and cylinders grinding together. We got the report back and our jaws hit the floor. The iron count was 12 parts per million. The aluminum count was 4 parts per million. The copper count was 2 parts per million. For context, anything under 20 parts per million of iron is considered healthy for this mileage. 12 is outstanding. The lab report proved that the film strength held up against the abuse. Even though the oil is physically thin, modern chemistry, specifically the additives like molybdenum and zinc, created a sacrificial barrier. The metal parts weren't touching metal. They were gliding on a microscopic layer of chemicals. The 0W-20 did not destroy the engine. In fact, it returned the best fuel economy of the entire test, averaging 24 miles per gallon. However, There was one concerning data point hidden in the report. It was the viscosity shear. New 0W-20 starts with a viscosity of roughly 8.5 centistokes. After 7,500 miles, it had dropped to 7.1. It was getting thinner. The molecules were literally being chopped up by the gears and the heat. If we had pushed this to 10,000 miles, it might have become too thin to maintain oil pressure on a hot day. It protected the engine, but it was dying a fast death doing it. The thin oil survived, but it was hanging by a thread at the end of the test. Now we had to see if the Goldilocks oil, the industry standard, could provide the same protection without degrading so fast. Round 2. The old reliable 5W-30. Next, we flushed the engine completely. We changed the filter to ensure no cross-contamination. We filled it with the oil that dominated the 90s and 2000s, 5W-30. This is the oil your dad probably uses. It is thicker than the 20, but not molasses. It represents the safe middle ground. I have a personal history with this viscosity. I once owned a beat-up 1998 BMW with 200,000 miles on it. I tried running thin oil in it once to clean it out, and it was a huge mistake. The oil light flickered at every stoplight, and the engine rattled like a skeleton in a trash can. I immediately swapped back to 5W-30, and the engine went silent. That experience taught me that viscosity matters. You need cushion. We ran the same exact test, same engine, same route, same driver. 7,500 miles on premium synthetic 5W-30. The difference in feel was subtle but present. The engine felt normal. It wasn't as snappy as the 0W-20, but it felt smoother at idle. The mechanical ticking sound from the high-pressure fuel injectors seemed muffled. It felt insulated. We drained the sample and sent it to the lab. The results came back, and we scrutinized them to see if the thicker oil actually reduced wear. The iron count came in at 11 parts per million. The aluminum was 3 parts per million. The copper was 2 parts per million. Look at those numbers closely. Iron dropped from 12 to 11. Aluminum dropped from 4 to 3. Is that a significant difference? Statistically, no. It is basically the margin of error. The 5W-30 protected the engine essentially the same amount as the water oil. However, the oil pressure told a completely different story. With the 0W-20, the hot idle oil pressure was roughly 22 pounds per square inch, PSI. With the 5W-30, the hot idle oil pressure jumped to 28 PSI. That is a 27% increase in oil pressure at idle. Why does this matter? Oil pressure is what keeps the bearings floating. If pressure drops too low, the metal touches metal, and your engine dies a catastrophic death. While the wear numbers were the same, the 5W-30 provided a much larger safety margin. If something went wrong, like a cooling system failure causing the engine to overheat, the 5W-30 would stay thicker longer, potentially saving the engine where the 0W-20 would fail. I have to ask, before we reveal the final winner, I want to know your bias. Are you team thin because you trust the engineers, or team thick because you trust your gut? Vote now in the comments. Let's see which side controls the audience. So the middle ground offered a safety buffer but cost us money. Now it was time to test the bulletproof theory. We loaded the engine with the thickest oil allowed, expecting it to show near zero wear. But what happened next shocked us and completely overturned the thicker is better myth. Round 3. The thick stuff, 5W-40. Now we enter the controversial territory, 5W-40. This viscosity is typically reserved for European cars like Audi and Mercedes, diesel trucks, or high-performance turbo engines that generate massive heat. People who use this oil claim it makes the engine indestructible. They say the extra thickness prevents wear when the engine is screaming at redline. They laugh at the 20-weight users. We flushed the engine again and poured in the 5W-40. It poured like syrup compared to the 0W-20. It was visibly heavy. We ran the same 7,500 miles. The driving experience changed drastically. There was a noticeable difference in how the car behaved. The engine felt sluggish on cold mornings. It took an extra split second to crank over before firing. When accelerating hard onto the highway, the engine felt like it was working harder. It felt like running through mud. You could physically feel the drag of the heavy fluid inside the crankcase. We sent the sample to the lab, fully expecting this oil to win the wear protection category hands down. We got the email, opened the PDF, and stared at the numbers in disbelief. Iron was 14 parts per million. Aluminum was 5 parts per million. Copper was 3 parts per million. Wait, where actually increased? Iron went up. Aluminum went up. How is that possible? Isn't thicker oil supposed to protect better? Here is the secret that thicker is better guys don't want to admit. Flow is just as important as pressure. Because the oil was thicker, it flowed slower. It took longer to circulate through the tight tolerances of this modern engine. This meant that on cold starts, which account for 90% of engine wear, the top of the engine, the camshafts and valves, was starved of oil for a fraction of a second longer than with the thinner oils. Over 7,500 miles, those cold starts added up. The thick oil actually caused more wear during the warm-up phase because it couldn't get out of the way of itself fast enough. Furthermore, the oil temperature revealed another shock. With the 0W-20, the average oil temp was 210 degrees. With the 5W-40, the average oil temp rose to 220 degrees. Why? Friction. The internal friction of pumping that thick oil created heat. The oil pump had to work harder. The crankshaft had to churn through heavier fluid. This heat degrades the oil faster and puts more thermal stress on the engine seals. We have the data points, and they paint a confusing picture. The thin oil saved gas, but sheared down. The thick oil caused wear at startup but held pressure. So, which one is actually the winner? The answer lies in analyzing the tight tolerance myth and understanding exactly what type of driver you are. So, which oil wins? The answer depends entirely on how you drive. There is no single best oil, but there is definitely a best oil for you. This test destroyed a major myth. It proved that thin oil does not equal more wear. The 0W-20 held its own against the heavyweights in terms of metal protection, proving that modern additive technology is miraculous. But it also proved that thick oil does not equal better protection. In fact, the thickest oil caused the most wear in our test cycle because of poor cold flow properties. Here is my advice to you. Open your owner's manual. Look at what the manufacturer recommends. If they say 0W-20, use it. Do not let your ego tell you it's too thin. The data doesn't lie. If you live in a scorching hot climate like Arizona, or your engine is getting old and tired with high mileage, bumping up to 5W-30 is a safe and smart move that adds a layer of insurance. But whatever you do not neglect the change interval. In our test, the 0W-20 was degrading by 7,500 miles. Its viscosity was dropping. If we had pushed it to 10,000 miles, which many manufacturers claim is safe, the results would have been catastrophic. Change your oil at 5,000 miles, regardless of what the bottle says. Oil is cheap. Engines are expensive. Click on the next video on your screen. And if this video saved you from making a massive mistake at the auto parts store, hit that like button. Subscribe so you don't miss our next test. Thanks for watching, and keep your engines running smooth.